was sitting on the washing machine, holding a plate of food I had just microwaved for myself. The noise from upstairs was muffled but constant. My daughter's voice barking something to her husband, the sound of cartoons, someone vacuuming. None of it was meant for me. I had gotten used to that. It was just after 7 p.m. when my phone buzzed. I nearly dropped my fork when I saw the screen. It was a message from my grandson, Noah. He was only 12. Smart. Sweet. At least he used to be. Lately, even he had started copying how his parents treated me. Cold glances, short answers, avoiding eye contact like I was a problem he didn't want to solve. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. But a message from him was rare now, so I opened it right away. It was an audio recording. Noah's voice was faint. "Grandma, I think you should hear this." Then silence for about 2 seconds, before my daughter's voice came through, sharp and unmistakable. "I'm sick of it, Josh. She just sits down there like a forgotten suitcase. She's an old burden, and I'm done pretending. I don't care if she paid for this place. She's not the owner, we are. She needs to remember that." The sound of a drawer slamming shut followed, then more words I couldn't make out clearly. The recording ended. My hand was shaking. I replayed it. Once, twice, 5 times. I didn't cry. I just sat there, still holding my plate of overcooked vegetables, staring at the darkened phone screen. I didn't even realize my food had gone. Cold, old burden. That was the phrase that kept ringing. I had paid the mortgage on this house for 12 years. Quietly, not all at once, bits at a time, down payment. Then the first few years of installments when Josh lost his job, then again when they refinanced. And I co-signed the paperwork. The house was in my daughter's name for credit reasons. I trusted her. I cooked, cleaned, took Noah to school when he was younger, bought groceries, paid half the utility bills, even when they said I didn't have to, not because I wanted praise, but because I thought we were a family. I had never asked for anything, except a small room in the basement. It was supposed to be temporary. "Just until we figure things out," she said when I moved in after my hip surgery. That was 4 years ago. That room didn't have a window. The walls were painted with leftover beige paint from when they remodeled the kitchen. I had a small bed, a side table, and a mini fridge that made a constant hum, but I kept it clean. I tried to make it comfortable. I didn't bother them. I stayed out of their way. I thought I was helping, and now I was a suitcase. I didn't respond to Noah. I didn't know what to say. Instead, I left the laundry room and went back to my basement, closed the door, turned off the lights. I sat on the edge of the bed for hours. The next morning, I woke up early and started making breakfast like I always did. Toast, scrambled eggs, coffee. I waited for someone to come down. No one did. So I put their plates in the fridge, labeled them with sticky notes, and left a small tray for myself by the washer. Later, I overheard Josh telling my daughter, "She's probably sulking again. You shouldn't have to feel guilty." My daughter just said, "I don't." And then she laughed. I heard the front door slam shut as they left to go out. The house went quiet again. That evening, I opened my documents folder. I found the paperwork from when I first helped them buy the house. I had copies of the checks I wrote, emails from the mortgage broker, the one where he said I was technically the primary source of income at the time, the one where my daughter had begged me to sign on the dotted line so they could finally give Noah a real home. At the time, I didn't ask for anything in return, but I had kept the papers. After that, I started making copies of everything, quietly. One folder went in my drawer, another in a safety deposit box, not because I wanted revenge, but because I started to feel afraid. I wasn't included in family dinners anymore. I was told, "Oh, you already ate, right?" Or, "We didn't think you'd want to join us. The dining room's kind of full." Once, I found a plate left on top of the dryer, a cold piece of chicken, wrapped in foil. Note. I brought a wrapped gift, just a notebook and a pen. Nothing expensive, just something I thought he might actually use. He opened it and smiled. "You're the only one who remembers I like writing stuff." Hannah looked at me, then looked away. I could tell she felt that comment in her chest. It wasn't about the notebook, it was about presence. It was about effort. Something I had always given without expecting anything back. A few nights later, I woke up around 3 a.m. and couldn't fall back asleep. I made tea and sat at the small table near the laundry machine. The basement was dark except for the soft, yellow light above the sink. I looked around. There were no framed photos, no flowers, no decorations. I had never tried to make this place feel like home because I was never sure how long they'd let me stay. Now, for the first time, I realized I didn't need their permission anymore. That weekend, I took some of my savings and bought a new lamp. A real rug, a small table with a drawer. I hung up a clock. I ordered 2 framed prints online. Nothing fancy, just details. Things that said, "This is my space. I belong here. And I decide what it looks like." I didn't ask anyone's opinion. When Hannah came downstairs a few days later to borrow the steamer, she looked around and paused. "You redecorated?" "Yes," she nodded slowly. "Looks better." I smiled. "It feels better." There was nothing else to say. In month 6, I received a letter from the county office. It confirmed the recorded partition on the house. My name was officially listed on public record as a co-owner of the property. They had attached a copy of the title for reference. I put the letter in a clear folder and slid it into my drawer. Then I sat down and exhaled. That folder wasn't revenge. It wasn't a trophy. It was proof. Proof that I didn't imagine my contributions. Proof that I wasn't just background noise in someone else's story. Proof that I had value, even if they refused to see it until they were legally forced to. Noah still visited. Less often now that he had school and friends and games. But when he did, he brought stories. He still sat on the couch next to me. Still asked what I was watching. Still reminded me of who I used to be before this house became a burden. One night he said, "You know, I used to think adults always knew what they were doing." "They don't," I said. "I figured that out." I laughed. He smiled. "You think we'll ever be normal again?" he asked. "Probably not," I said. "But we'll be honest. That matters more." He nodded. I like that. When he left that night, I sat in the quiet again. No sadness, no anger, just peace. I hadn't won anything. I hadn't taken anything from them. I had simply taken myself back, and that was enough. I kept the note but didn't respond. I didn't need her to promise anything. I just needed her to stop pretending I didn't exist. The days went on like that. Quiet, respectful, restrained. They stopped asking me for help. They stopped trying to push me out. And for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like I was living in someone else's home. It was still their house. But now they understood it was mine too. It had been almost 4 months since the partition was signed. Since then, no one had brought up legal paperwork, ownership percentages, or moving forward plans. The house had found a new rhythm, slower, more careful. I still lived in the basement. They still lived upstairs. But the weight of that dynamic was different now. There was no more pretending that I was lucky to be there. They understood I had every right to stay. Josh barely spoke to me. That didn't bother me. He looked tired all the time, worn thin by the financial pressure that was no longer cushioned by my quiet support. I heard him on the phone some nights, always in hushed tones, arguing with banks, checking on job applications, sometimes venting to friends about the mortgage payments. I wasn't curious. I didn't ask. Hannah, on the other hand, had become watchful. I'd catch her looking at me in the kitchen or when I walked through the living room. She wasn't angry anymore, but she wasn't sure how to interact with me either. Guilt is hard to sit with when you still live in the same space as the person you wronged. She tried small gestures, folding my laundry before I got to it, leaving out groceries she knew I liked, making enough dinner for 4 again instead of 3. Nothing was ever said out loud. She never asked for forgiveness, and I never offered it. But it was a quiet truce that neither of us was interested in breaking. Noah was the only one who spoke to me like nothing had happened. He was back to stopping by the basement, sitting with me while I watched the news or folding socks on the couch. He told me about school, about a girl he liked, about how he wanted to be a vet, then a lawyer, then maybe a park ranger. His world was still wide open. I didn't remind him how quickly that can change. One evening, I made dinner. Not just for me, but for all of us. I didn't say a word. I just left the dishes on the table, lasagna, salad, bread, and went back downstairs. I didn't expect anyone to thank me. I didn't do it for that. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. "Hannah, we were going to order pizza," she said. But Noah saw the lasagna and insisted we eat it. I nodded. "It was good," she added. "Thank you." I nodded again. She didn't say anything else, just stood there. I could tell she was waiting for something. "I'm not mad anymore," I said. "I'm just done trying to be what you want me to be. I never asked you to be anything. You asked me to disappear. Just not with words." She looked away. "I didn't know how to be a good daughter," she said finally. "I was so caught up in trying to keep control of everything that I stopped acting like I cared." "You stopped because you thought I'd never stop giving." She didn't deny it. "I can't go back and undo what we said," she said. "But I don't want us to live in a house where we can't even speak." "Then speak," I said. "But don't try to fix what you haven't faced." That was the most honest conversation we ever had. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just stood there with her arms crossed, nodding slowly. Then she left. From that point forward, we weren't mother and daughter trying to reclaim lost affection. We were two people living under the same roof, slowly learning how to exist with honesty instead of illusion. I started taking small trips, day bus rides to the farmer's market across town, afternoon visits to the senior center where I joined. A crafts group. Nobody asked me where I was going. Nobody acted like they needed me to stay and clean up their messes. The house survived without my money. That was the proof I had always needed. By month 5, Josh got a new job. A lower position than before, but stable. Hannah picked up freelance accounting work from home. They were managing, struggling probably, but managing. And I was no longer part of their financial plan. That was the line I had drawn. Noah turned 13 a week later. He asked if I would come upstairs for cake. I did. While I was in the backyard tending to a few potted plants I had moved near the basement steps, I overheard part of a phone call through the open kitchen window. Josh was speaking, quiet, but frustrated. "No, we can't touch that equity. It's locked in now." "No, because it's legally hers. I told you. We signed the damn papers." Silence. She said she doesn't want to sell. So unless we buy her out, which we can't afford right now, it's off the table. Another pause. "She's not budging, and honestly, I don't think she ever will." The line went quiet for a bit after that. I kept trimming the dead ends off my basil. I didn't stop to process it. I already knew what he was saying. It wasn't just disappointment in his voice. It was frustration over losing control. Later that day, Hannah tried to bring up the idea of compromise. She waited until Josh left to run errands, then knocked on the basement door and stepped down cautiously, like she was approaching a fragile animal. "I wanted to talk to you about something," she said. I didn't stop folding the laundry, but I turned toward her. "I know things haven't been easy," she began. "And I know we're all adjusting, but Josh and I were thinking, if there's any chance you'd be open to selling your share back to us, we could—" "No." She blinked. "You haven't even heard the offer." "I don't need to," I said. "This isn't a negotiation." "I'm not trying to push you out," she insisted. "Then why are you trying to take back control?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She looked down, picked at her fingernails. That was a habit she had as a child. Whenever she was caught in a lie or didn't know how to defend herself, We're just struggling right now, she finally said. Josh's hours got cut and things are tight. I understand that, I replied. But you're not going to fix it by pretending the last decade didn't happen. She didn't answer. I didn't ask for rent. I didn't ask for favors. I asked for respect. And when I didn't get it, I took what was mine. That's not cruelty, Hannah. That's survival. She stayed quiet for a while, then nodded slowly. I get it, she said, though I wasn't sure she really did. After she left, I sat down and looked around the basement. The furniture was old. The ceiling was low. The washing machine made that weird rattling noise when it hit spin cycle. But it was mine now. My space, my boundary, and my line in the sand. The next few days were filled with silence again, but I began to notice how uncomfortable that silence made them. Before the partition, they thought silence meant compliance. Now, it meant distance, and they didn't like being on the other side of it. Josh started leaving earlier in the mornings and coming home later. I heard him complaining on the phone more than once about finances. Once I overheard him asking a friend for a loan. Another time, he argued with Hannah about her spending. I stayed out of it. I didn't comment. I didn't offer help. Not anymore. 1 evening, I was upstairs refilling my water pitcher when Noah came into the kitchen. He stood by the counter awkwardly, then reached into the fridge and pulled out a juice box. He looked at me for a second before speaking. Dad said you're not going to help them anymore, he said. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to hear what he really meant. Does that mean you're mad at all of us? No, I said. It means I'm tired of pretending I don't matter. He sat at the table. I stayed by the sink. I didn't mean to be mean to you, he said. I know, but I didn't do anything either. That's also true. He looked down. You don't need to fix anything, Noah, I said, but I hope you remember all this. One day you'll be in a position to treat someone with kindness or ignore them because it's easier. He nodded. I think I already understand that now. I believed him. That night, he came downstairs and watched TV with me again, just like he used to when he was younger. We didn't talk much, but he stayed until the episode ended. Then he got up, said goodnight, and went. Back upstairs, small steps. The kind that matter more than grand gestures. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my basement door. It was from Hannah. It read, I won't ask again about the house. I understand now. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had no choice. I can't undo everything, but I want to try to be better, starting with just listening more. I sat on my bed, held the cup of tea I had forgotten to warm, and stared at the wall. They weren't monsters, but they weren't innocent either. They used me when they needed me, then discarded me when I became inconvenient. And even now, when they knew they couldn't push me out, they were still avoiding the one thing I wanted, truth. The next morning, I didn't mention what I had heard. I acted normal, made breakfast for myself, cleaned the laundry area, fed the neighbor's cat like I did most Fridays when they were out of town. But I started planning again. Mr. Brenner had mentioned something during our last phone call. If you want to secure your portion of the house, the next step is a legal partition. It doesn't mean you have to split the house in two, but it gives you control. They can't do anything without your consent. At the time, I had told him I wasn't ready. Now I was. I asked him to prepare the paperwork. 2 days later, a packet arrived by courier, a legal partition request, a summary of the lien, and an offer. Hannah and Josh could either buy me out, or we could sell the house and divide the proceeds. I knew what I wanted. I didn't want their money. I didn't want the whole house. I just wanted the part that was mine to be on paper, in ink, permanent. Hannah found the packet in the mailbox and brought it inside. I was drinking coffee in the kitchen when she opened it. She didn't say anything. At first, she sat at the table and read every word. Josh wasn't home. It was just her and me. When she finished reading, she set the papers down and stared at me. You're really going through with this? Yes. I wrote you a letter, she said. I tried to say I was sorry. I got it, I said. I read it. And? I took a sip of my coffee before answering. And now I'm taking care of myself. She looked away. Her hands shook slightly. "I never wanted it to come to this," she said, "but it did. I thought I was a good daughter." "You thought being quiet was enough," I said. "But I wasn't quiet. I was invisible. You made sure of that." She didn't argue. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked. I shook my head. "I don't want revenge. I just want protection. This is your house, yes, but it's also mine. I won't be pushed out of what I helped build. I won't fight you in court," she said after a moment. "We'll sign the papers. You'll have your share on record." I nodded. For the first time, her voice didn't carry resentment. It carried resignation. And maybe, buried deep, understanding. Later that week, the three of us, Hannah, Josh, and I, sat down at the table with Mr. Brenner. We signed the paperwork. I retained 47% ownership of the house, based on my documented contributions. It wasn't about the number. It was about finally being seen. That night, Hannah made dinner and brought a plate down to me. She knocked. She waited. When I opened the door, she handed me the plate and said, "Noah made the salad. He wanted to help." I accepted the food, and for the first time in years, I said, "Thank you." We both stood in silence for a few seconds. Then she nodded and left. I ate quietly, in peace. No tension, no whispers, just silence, and it felt earned. 2 weeks after the partition was signed, everything felt neutral. There were no more arguments, no more tension. But there also wasn't warmth. We coexisted like neighbors who didn't speak the same language anymore. I didn't expect Sunday dinners or family movie nights. I wasn't asking for that. The only thing I wanted was to not be treated like someone they were waiting to dispose of. Hannah and Josh started handling their finances differently. I saw fewer packages at the door. Josh canceled the landscaping service and started mowing the lawn himself. The tone of their conversations became tighter, especially when they thought I wasn't around. I could tell they were doing the math, realizing how much they'd leaned on my contributions all those years without realizing they'd ever have to live without them. I kept to my routine. I cooked for myself, cleaned my own space. I even began spending more time outside, walking in the mornings, stopping by the local library. It had been years since I'd done that. I had given so much time, energy, and money to that house, and to them that I forgot what it felt like to live my own life. One morning, just a little, they probably won't, but that's not always a bad thing. He didn't respond, but he stayed there for almost 20 minutes, scrolling on his phone, just being there. That was more than I'd had from him in years. Upstairs, I could hear Hannah pacing in the hallway. Josh slammed a cupboard. The house was loud again, but for a different reason. They were uncomfortable now. They were losing control, and I was fine with that. A week after the lien was filed, a letter arrived, addressed to me, not the usual envelope with my name scribbled on the back, but an actual certified letter. Inside was an apology, handwritten, from Hannah. It was short. "Mom, I know this isn't enough, and I don't know how to fix it. I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for what we've done. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I don't expect you to forgive us, but I wanted to say it anyway. Hannah." I read it 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to forgive her, but I wasn't going to destroy her either. Some things didn't need to be answered right away. For the first time in years, I spent the afternoon baking. I made lemon, bars, Noah's favorite. I left them on the counter. No note. No explanation. Later, I heard someone open the tin and take one. That was enough. I wasn't here to punish them. I was here to reclaim my place. And I wasn't leaving. The first few weeks after the lien was filed were quiet, tense, but calm. Hannah was more cautious in how she moved around me, always choosing her words carefully when we crossed paths in the kitchen or hallway. Josh stayed distant, always upstairs or in the garage, always avoiding any kind of conversation with me. Noah was somewhere in between. Sometimes he lingered near me, sat in silence while I watched TV, or asked if I needed help carrying laundry, but mostly, he kept his head down. He was still a child, even if this house had forced him to grow up in uncomfortable ways. I didn't press him. I didn't ask for more than what he was ready to give. Then one night, I heard everything. It was a Thursday. I had gone upstairs late to warm up a cup of tea. It was almost 10 p.m. The lights were still on in the kitchen and dining room, which was unusual. Hannah and Josh usually went to bed early, especially on weekdays. I took quiet steps, not because I was hiding, but because I didn't want to disturb anyone. I thought they might already be asleep. That's when I heard them. They were sitting at the dining table, not arguing, but their voices were sharp, tense. Josh sounded frustrated. "This is ridiculous, Hannah," he said. "You should have handled this years ago." I didn't think she'd ever push back, Hannah replied. She never said a word about ownership until now. "Because we made her feel like she couldn't," he said. "You think she wanted to live in a basement? She paid for this house, and we treat her like a tenant we're trying to get rid of." "You were the one who said she should go to assisted living," she snapped. "I said that after you told me she was losing her mind, that she was becoming confused, that she was forgetting things. But she's not. She's the only one around here who's been paying attention to anything." There was a long silence. I stayed still, not moving from where I stood near the stairwell. "I didn't know it would go this far," Hannah finally said, her voice low. "I just wanted space. I wanted to have our own house, not feel like I was still in her shadow." Josh laughed bitterly. "Shadow? The only reason we even have this house is because of her. Without her money, we'd still be in that tiny apartment next to the freeway." "I know," she said. "You think I don't know? Every time I look at her, I feel like I owe her something I can't ever repay." "You do." Another pause. Then Hannah said something that made my stomach twist. She didn't even want to move in at first. I asked her. I said we needed help. I said she'd be part of the family. And then I started treating her like she was just extra. Josh didn't respond, and then softer she added, "Sometimes I hate myself for how I've treated her. But it's easier to blame her than admit I created this." I didn't wait for the rest. I walked back downstairs, slow and quiet. I had heard enough. It wasn't just the words that got to me. It was the tone. There was regret in her voice, but no plan to fix anything. Just guilt sitting heavy, never followed by action. Nobody confronted me directly, but everything shifted. The small talk stopped. No more fake pleasantries. My daughter Hannah barely looked at me. Josh kept to himself, either in the garage or in their bedroom. And Noah, well, Noah avoided eye contact again. I guess whatever courage it took to send that audio had disappeared. But I wasn't expecting kindness. I wasn't expecting apologies. I wasn't expecting them to treat me like anything more than an inconvenience. What I did expect, what I made sure of, was that they would start taking me seriously. And they did. The first sign came 3 days after the notice. Hannah knocked on the basement door. She didn't barge in. She waited. That alone was unusual. Opened it and looked at her. She had her arms crossed, holding a printed email. Her expression was tight. "Did you really talk to a lawyer?" she asked. "Yes." She looked down at the email. "This says you're claiming partial ownership." "I'm not claiming it," I said. "I'm proving it. There's a difference." She took a deep breath and didn't say anything for a moment. "We're not trying to hurt you," she said quietly. "You know that, right?" I didn't respond. "I mean, we just thought it would be easier for everyone. You'd be more comfortable somewhere with support, activities, a nurse on site. We're not monsters. Is that what you tell yourself?" Her face stiffened. "You think we've done nothing for you?" "I don't think," I said. I remember paying this house for years. I remember when you were pregnant with Noah and couldn't afford groceries, and I was still working part-time. I remember when Josh totaled the car, and I took out a loan for you both. I remember when you said I could live here, and then slowly made it clear I wasn't welcome outside the basement. I never said that. No, you didn't. But you made it clear in other ways. Every cold meal, Every dinner upstairs where I wasn't invited. Every morning you walked past me without a word. And now, after all I've given, I'm a burden. She flinched when I said it. The word she'd used. I was angry. She said, "I didn't mean it." "You did." She lowered her head and nodded slightly, like she couldn't deny it anymore. I didn't soften. I didn't offer forgiveness. That wasn't the point. "We're not selling the house," she said, after a long pause. "We're not asking you to leave anymore. But this doesn't feel right either. Lawyers? Legal notices?" "I asked nicely for 10 years, I said. "This is what happens when people stop listening." She left after that. I didn't hear from her for the rest of the day. Josh didn't speak to me for the rest of the week, but the dinner plate started appearing on the kitchen table again. 3 settings, not 2. And there was a 4th plate wrapped in foil left on the counter for me, still warm. Small things. Not apologies. Not gestures of love. But signs that they knew the rules had changed. The quietness in the house became its own language. The tension never left, but the hostility had been replaced with caution. I met with Mr. Brenner again the following week. He looked over the response their lawyer sent and nodded slowly. "They're backing down. They don't want this to escalate," he said. "But they're not signing over the house either. They're stalling." I expected that. "Do you want to keep going?" he asked. "We can apply pressure, demand an official buyout, or even force a sale if necessary." "I don't want to sell," I said. "I just want what's mine to be acknowledged." He nodded. "Then we'll file a lien against the property. That'll ensure they can't refinance or sell without your consent." I agreed. The papers were filed a few days later. I didn't tell Hannah or Josh. They'd find out soon enough. Noah came to me later that night. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood in the doorway of the basement, holding his phone in his hand. "Was it because of what I sent you?" he asked. I looked up from my book. "That recording." He shifted uncomfortably. "Did it cause all of this?" "No," I said. "It just showed me what I needed to see." He looked down. "I didn't mean to make everything worse." "You didn't," I told him. "You did the right thing. It was brave." He stood there for a few seconds more, then sat down, next to me on the small couch. "I miss how things used to be," he said. "Me too. But I don't know if things will go back to normal." I smiled. They were laughing. I stood by the basement door and watched them for a few minutes. Neither of them saw me, or maybe they just didn't care to look. That night, when everyone was asleep, I pulled out a box of my old things. I had kept copies of documents, not because I thought I'd need them, but because I'm the kind of person who keeps everything. Old receipts, warranties, bank letters. It turns out that kind of habit can be useful. I found the co-signing documents, my name and signature, right there on the contract. I found the email trail from when I sent money for the down payment. I found the email where my daughter promised, "Once we get stable, we'll add you to the deed properly." That email was dated 9 years ago. I printed every piece of it. I organized the folder and put it in my bag. Then I called Mr. Brenner. He was the lawyer I had spoken to earlier, the one from church. He didn't charge me for the first meeting. "I just want to know if I have any leverage," I told him. "They're trying to move me out, into a care home." "You absolutely have leverage," he said, after reviewing the documents. "This house wouldn't exist without your financial input. And based on what I'm seeing, you have enough proof to bring this to court if needed. But I'll say this, most people in their situation don't want that smoke. They're banking on the fact that you won't fight." He was right. They were sure I wouldn't say a word. They saw me as tired, dependent, someone who needed them. They forgot I used to take care of 2 kids on a waitress salary. I paid off every debt I ever had. I didn't come from money, but I knew how to protect what little I had. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about the audio message. Noah had sent it without knowing the kind of impact it would have. Or maybe he knew. Maybe it was a clumsy attempt to do something right. I hadn't replied to him yet. I didn't know how. The next morning, I woke up early and made pancakes. My daughter came into the kitchen halfway through. She didn't say anything at first, just walked past me and poured herself a coffee. Then she said, "We looked at a few places. They have good reviews. Some of them even have activities and transport." I didn't turn around. I flipped another pancake. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. She froze. "Mom?" I said I'm not going anywhere. She put her mug down harder than she needed to. "You're being difficult for no reason. We're trying to help you." "No," I said. "You're trying to get rid of me." She didn't respond, just walked out. Later that day, I placed the financial folder on the kitchen counter. I didn't say a word, just left it there, open to the page with the $96,000 figure. Josh found it first. Babe, can you come look at this?" My daughter came over. I heard the sound of paper flipping. "What is this?" "My contribution," I said. "To this house that you're trying to force me out of." "Why are you bringing this up now?" she asked. "Because you made it necessary," I said. Josh said. "That doesn't mean—" "It means," I interrupted, "that if you try to move me out, I will contest the ownership of this house, and I will win." Silence. They looked at each other. "You're not the only ones who can talk to lawyers," I added. My daughter's face flushed. Josh looked like he wanted to argue but didn't know how. I walked away. That night, they didn't speak to me. Noah came down with a bowl of popcorn and sat beside me in the basement for 5 minutes. He didn't say anything, just sat there. Before he left, he whispered, "Sorry." I nodded. I didn't hug him. I didn't say, "It's okay," because it wasn't, but it was a start. Later, I called Mr. Brenner again. "I want to move everything to my name," I said. "You're ready to go forward?" he asked. "Yes." "I'll draft the notice," he said. "They'll have 30 days to respond before we file." "I don't need a confrontation," I said. "Then we'll do it quiet." And we did. The papers were delivered 2 days later. I didn't leave my room that night. I just waited. The next morning, I heard my daughter crying in the kitchen. Josh was pacing, angry, whispering curses. I didn't go up, because I didn't need to. They knew now. And from that point forward, the balance in the house shifted. I wasn't the burden anymore. I was the owner. After the letter was delivered, the mood in the house changed. Not in a loud or explosive way. Nobody yelled. That night, I called a lawyer, someone I had met years ago through church. I didn't tell anyone. I just explained the situation and asked quietly if I had any rights. He told me I had more than they probably realized. The next day, I watched from the basement window as they brought home patio furniture. Expensive, white and blue cushions. I knew how much it cost because I saw the receipt left on the kitchen counter. It was almost the exact amount of the last check I had deposited into their account. I wasn't even asked. I started eating all my meals downstairs. Noah stopped speaking to me. When I asked him how school was going, he shrugged and said, "Fine," then walked away. I didn't know what hurt more, my daughter's words or the way her son was learning to treat me as if I didn't exist. A week later, my daughter knocked on the basement door. She didn't wait for me to open. She walked in. "Mom," she said, "Josh and I have been talking. We think it's time you start considering other options." I looked at her. "What does that mean?" She sighed, crossed her arms. "It means you're getting older, and we think it might be better for everyone if you looked into some kind of facility, maybe assisted living, just a small place, something manageable." I stared at her. "You're kicking me out," I said. "No one's kicking you out," she said quickly. "We just think it's time to plan for your future." I didn't reply. She left me a brochure on the washing machine. It had a picture of smiling seniors playing cards in a well-lit room. I threw it in the trash. That night, I found Noah's old drawing tucked in one of my photo albums. Crayon sketch of me holding his hand. The words "Best Grandma Ever" scribbled in crooked letters. I sat with it in my lap, my hands trembling. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. But more than that, I was clear. I had a plan now, and it started with one final visit to the bank. At the bank, I sat down across from the same woman who had opened the joint account for me and my daughter years ago. Her name was Lisa, middle-aged, kind voice, the kind of woman who always asked how your day was going even when she had a line out the door. She didn't recognize me at first. That made sense. I had only come in person once. Most of the payments I made to the mortgage were done through wire transfer or check. When I gave her my name and mentioned the property address, her eyebrows lifted. Oh, yes. That's the Henderson file. One moment, let me pull it up. I waited in silence as she typed. A few clicks. Then she leaned forward slightly. I see this is a joint account. The primary name is your daughter, but yes, all the early payments were made from this account here. She turned her screen slightly, pointing to my old checking account. Your name is also listed as financial guarantor. I want that in writing, I said. She hesitated. We don't usually, I'm not asking for anything private from their side. I just want confirmation of my contributions to the account. All transactions from my name that went toward the mortgage. She nodded after a second. All right, I can generate a record of that. It'll take a few minutes. As I waited, I thought back to the first time they asked for help. It was after Josh had lost his job at the insurance company. He was stressed, the house was new, and the payments were too high. My daughter said they were going to lose everything. I had just sold a piece of land I inherited from my aunt. I didn't hesitate. Just until we get back on our feet, she said. I didn't know back on our feet would mean a lifetime of being treated like an unwanted guest in a house I paid for. Lisa came back with a printed folder. It's all here, from the initial payment to the monthly contributions over the years. Looks like it adds up to, she glanced down, then looked up at me. Over $96,000? I nodded. I didn't need to hear the number. I knew what I had done. Thank you, I said. She smiled. I hope everything's okay. It will be, I said. Then I left. Back home, the garage was full of new boxes. Noticed lawn decorations, unopened electronics, a pressure washer still in the packaging. All bought recently, none of it essential. They had no trouble spending money, just trouble acknowledging where it came from. Josh was in the backyard putting up a string of decorative lights. My daughter was standing next to him with a glass of wine in her hand.